The evening sun cast long shadows across San Francisco as Judge Edward Chen stepped out of his Blacktown car. He straightened his bow tie and brushed invisible lint from his expensive tuxedo. Tonight was the annual San Francisco Film Foundation charity gala, and Chen felt a surge of importance as he handed his keys to the valet. "Good evening, Judge Chen," the young valet said with a quick nod. Chen barely acknowledged him. He was too busy scanning the crowd of people filing into the Grand Hotel. Many faces he recognized from television, movies, and local politics. This was his kind of event, full of important people who could see how important he was too. Palace Hotel glowed with warm light. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, and flower arrangements filled the air with sweet scents. Judge Chen walked through the main doors, his chest puffed out slightly. A waiter offered him champagne from a silver tray, and he took a glass without saying thank you. "Judge Chen." "So glad you could make it," said Judy Parker, the event organizer. She was a small woman with a big smile and an even bigger list of wealthy contacts. "Wouldn't miss it," Chen replied, sipping his champagne. "Who's here worth talking to?" Judy's smile tightened a bit. "Well, our guest of honor arrived early. Clint Eastwood is near the fountain. He's receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award tonight." Chen's eyes narrowed. He had never liked Eastwood. Too conservative, too old-fashioned, too ... Everything Chen disagreed with. But he was curious to see the famous actor and director up close. "I'll mingle," Chen said, already walking away from Judy. The ballroom was filling up quickly. Men in black tuxedos and women in colorful dresses moved around like schools of fish, gathering in small groups, then breaking apart to form new ones. Chen nodded at familiar faces, other judges, a state senator, some wealthy tech company owners. He felt at home among the powerful. After his first glass of champagne, Chen felt good. After his second, he felt great. By his third, he felt bold. Too bold. Across the room stood Clint Eastwood. Even in his 90s, the man had presence. He stood tall, his face lined with age but his eyes still sharp and alert. A small crowd had gathered around him, people laughing at his stories and hanging on his every word. Among those listening to Eastwood was Susan Miller, a film producer known for her work on serious documentaries. Next to her stood Jack Bennett, the mayor of San Francisco, nodding eagerly at whatever Eastwood was saying. Several other people formed a half-circle around the Hollywood legend. Chen watched from a distance, feeling a strange mix of jealousy and dislike. Why did people still care so much about this old man? His movies were violent. His politics were from another era. Yet here everyone was, treating him like royalty. The judge drained his third glass of champagne and grabbed a fourth from a passing waiter. The alcohol warmed his blood and loosened his thoughts. Bad thoughts. Thoughts a federal judge should keep to himself. "I think I'll go say hello to our guest of honor," Chen said to no one in particular. He moved across the room with purpose. Weaving between guests, his eyes fixed on Eastwood. As he got closer, he could hear Eastwood's famous raspy voice telling a story about filming in the desert. "The heat was so bad the camera equipment started to melt," Eastwood was saying. "We had to wrap ice packs around the cameras just to keep shooting." Everyone laughed. Mayor Bennett slapped his knee. "That's amazing, Mr. Eastwood. Your dedication to your craft is inspiring." Chen rolled his eyes. "Dedication to craft? Please. It was just movies. Not like being a federal judge, someone who actually made important decisions that affected real people's lives." He pushed his way into the circle, not caring that he interrupted Eastwood mid-sentence. The group parted, some with surprised looks, others with annoyed frowns. "So here he is," Chen said loudly. "The great Clint Eastwood." There was an awkward pause. Eastwood looked at Chen with calm eyes, perhaps trying to place him. "Good evening," Eastwood said simply, extending his hand. "I don't believe we've met." Chen ignored the hand. "Oh, I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. The tough guy. The man with the gun. The conservative hero." Susan Miller stepped forward slightly. "Judge Chen, it's nice of you to join us. Mr. Eastwood was just telling us about—" "I'm sure he was." Chen cut her off. "Telling stories about his glory days. When men were men and everyone else knew their place, right, Mr. Eastwood?" The temperature in the circle seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mayor Bennett cleared his throat nervously. Eastwood's expression didn't change much, just a slight narrowing of his eyes. "Everyone's entitled to their opinion," Eastwood said calmly. "Even judges." Something about his calm made Chen angrier. He wanted a reaction. He wanted to prove that Eastwood was just as bad as he thought. "Opinions?" Chen said with a harsh laugh. "I deal in facts, Mr. Eastwood. And the fact is, your movies glorify violence. Your politics undermine progress. Your whole career has been about making people think that justice comes from the barrel of a gun rather than a courtroom." People around them had stopped their own conversations. The circle widened as more guests turned to watch the scene unfolding. Chen was vaguely aware of the attention, but too far gone to care. "You might want to slow down on the champagne, Your Honor," Eastwood suggested quietly. "Don't tell me what to do." Chen's voice rose. "You think because you played tough guys, you know something about real courage? About real justice? You know nothing." On the edge of the crowd, Frank Rivera, the chief U.S. Marshal for the Northern District of California, was watching with growing concern. He had come to the gala as security for several federal judges. Now he was watching one of those judges make a very public fool of himself. Rivera spoke quietly into his radio. "We may have a situation with Judge Chen. Stand by." Back in the circle, Eastwood remained calm. "I apologize if my work has offended you, Judge. Perhaps we should discuss this another time when there's no other time." Chen jabbed a finger toward Eastwood's chest. "Right here, right now, someone needs to tell you that you're not a hero. You're just an old man who made violent movies and thinks he knows what's best for America." Karen Doyle, a clerk from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, had been taking pictures of celebrities all evening for her social media. When she saw Judge Chen confronting Eastwood, she switched her phone to video mode and started recording. "Judge Chen is going to regret this tomorrow," she whispered to her friend. Susan Miller tried once more to defuse the situation. "Judge Chen, perhaps you'd like to see the silent auction items? There's a wonderful weekend getaway package that I'm not finished." Chen nearly shouted. His face was red now, his bow tie slightly crooked. "Mr. Eastwood here needs to understand that his time is over. His type of thinking is over. And I, for one, am glad of it." Eastwood looked at Chen for a long moment, then simply said, "Well, that's a hell of a thing to say to someone at a charity event." A few people chuckled nervously. Chen felt his face grow hotter. He wasn't being taken seriously. Even now, Eastwood was winning the crowd. "You think this is funny?" Chen snarled. "I sit on the federal bench. I shape the law of this country. What do you do now? Make mediocre movies that fewer and fewer people watch." From across the room, Marshal Rivera was now moving toward the scene, his hand on his radio. Two other marshals had entered the ballroom and were positioning themselves near exits. They had been instructed to be discreet but ready. Harold Barnes, the head of the Judicial Conduct Committee, happened to be at the gala too. He watched with growing alarm as Judge Chen continued his tirade. This was exactly the kind of behavior that damaged public trust in the judiciary. "Someone should stop this," Barnes murmured to his wife. "This is going to be very bad for Judge Chen." He had no idea just how right he was. Judge Chen swayed slightly on his feet as he continued his attack on Clint Eastwood. The crowd around them had grown larger. People stopped their conversations to watch the scene unfold. Some guests pulled out their phones to record the moment. Conan Doyle's wasn't the only camera capturing Judge Chen's meltdown. "So here's the great Clint Eastwood," Judge Chen announced loudly, his words slightly slurred. "The man who talks to empty chairs and thinks he knows what's best for America." The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Waiters stopped serving drinks. The musicians in the corner stopped playing. All eyes were on the angry judge and the famous actor. Eastwood, known for his calm demeanor, simply raised an eyebrow. His face remained neutral, but his eyes showed a mix of surprise and disappointment. He had dealt with critics throughout his long career, but rarely so directly and never at a charity event. Susan Miller stepped forward and tried to ease the tension. "Judge Chen, perhaps this isn't no. I think it's important that someone finally tells Mr. Eastwood that his outdated views and macho persona have done more harm than good." Chen cut her off. His voice grew louder with each word. "Your films glorify violence and promote a backward view of justice that undermines everything I work for in my courtroom." Eastwood remained composed. He stood tall despite his age, his hands relaxed at his sides. "Everyone's entitled to their opinion, Your Honor," he said calmly. This calm response only made Chen angrier. He took a step closer to Eastwood, entering his personal space. The guests nearby backed away slightly, creating more room for the confrontation. "Don't give me that reasonable act," Chen said, jabbing a finger toward Eastwood's chest. "You've made a career out of playing tough guys who take the law into their own hands. Do you know what that does to the legal system? It makes people think courts don't matter, that judges don't matter." Jack Bennett, the mayor, tried to step between them. "Judge Chen, this is hardly the place for—" "Stay out of this, Jack," Chen snapped. "You're just worried about your donor dollars." The mayor's face flushed red, but he backed away. No one else tried to intervene as Chen continued his attack. "You know what I see when I look at your films, Eastwood? I see a man afraid of change, afraid of progress, afraid of a world where white men with guns aren't the heroes anymore." Eastwood's expression finally changed, but not in the way Chen expected. Instead of anger, there was something like pity in his eyes. "That says more about what you're seeing than what I'm showing," he replied quietly. Across the room, Marshal Frank Rivera was speaking urgently into his radio. "Yes, sir, it's getting worse. He's creating a major scene." He paused, listening to instructions from the other end. "Understood. We'll handle it discreetly." Rivera nodded to the two other marshals in the room. Diane Peters positioned herself near the main exit while Eric Hammond moved closer to the scene, pretending to be interested in a nearby art display. Meanwhile, Conan Doyle kept recording. Her hand was shaking slightly, but the video was clear enough. Judge Chen's face was red with anger, his bow tie now completely crooked, and a small spot of champagne stained his white shirt. Eastwood stood opposite him, composed and dignified. Despite the verbal assault, "You want to know what real justice is, Eastwood?" Chen continued, his voice rising further. "It's not some cowboy with a six-shooter. It's not some cop who doesn't play by the rules. It's the careful application of law by people who spent years studying it. People like me." Harold Barnes, head of the Judicial Conduct Committee, watched in horror. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "It's Barnes. I'm at the Film Foundation Gala. Judge Chen is publicly berating Clint Eastwood and making a complete spectacle of himself. Yes, there are recordings. Lots of them. This is going to be a major problem." Back at the center of attention, Chen was building to a crescendo. "I've sat through your films and had to endure your speeches. You think because you can squint and whisper threats that you understand justice? You know nothing about real justice." Eastwood took a small step back. "I make movies, Judge. I tell stories. I've never claimed to be anything else. Stories matter." Chen almost shouted. "They shape how people think about the world. And your stories, Mr. Eastwood, have poisoned the well." "Peter." Walsh, a prominent attorney and friend of Eastwood's, had seen enough. He stepped forward. "Judge Chen, I think you've made your point. Perhaps we should all take a moment to remember why we're here tonight, to support the Film Foundation and its educational programs." Chen turned his anger toward Walsh. "Oh look, another defender of the old guard. Tell me, Peter, do you also think justice comes from the barrel of a gun?" "No, I think justice comes from measured, thoughtful people," Walsh replied evenly. "Not from public tantrums." The word tantrum hit Chen like a slap. He glared at Walsh, then at Eastwood, then at the crowd watching him. For a brief moment, he seemed to realize what he was doing. A flicker of doubt crossed his face. But then he drowned it in more anger. "You all think I'm overreacting," Chen said, addressing the entire room now. "But none of you understand what's at stake. Men like Eastwood have been selling a dangerous vision of America for decades. A vision where complicated problems have simple solutions, where might makes right." "Where, Judge Chen?" The new voice came from behind him. Chen turned to see Marshal Frank Rivera standing there, his expression serious but professional. Diane Peters and Eric Hammond flanked him, a few steps back. "What do you want?" Chen asked, annoyed at the interruption. "I need you to come with me, sir," Rivera said calmly but firmly. Chen blinked in confusion. "What is this about?" "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir, I do," Rivera replied. "That's precisely why I need you to come with us now, quietly." Chen looked around at the crowd, at Eastwood, at the Marshals. Slowly, the reality of the situation began to sink in. He was making a scene, a public scene, at a high-profile event, with countless witnesses and cameras. "This is ridiculous," he protested, but with less force than before. "I was just expressing my opinion, sir," Rivera said more firmly. "Please come with us now. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Chen's face flushed with a new emotion, embarrassment. He straightened his jacket in a weak attempt to regain dignity. "Fine, but I want to make it clear that I'm going voluntarily." Rivera nodded, though everyone could see there was nothing voluntary about it. As the Marshals began to escort Chen toward the exit, he couldn't resist one final look back at Eastwood. The old actor watched him go, his expression unreadable. He made no gesture of triumph, showed no sign of satisfaction at Chen's humiliation. He simply watched, his famous eyes steady and calm. As they reached the door, Chen stumbled slightly. Marshal Peters caught his arm to steady him. The touch seemed to break something in Chen. The anger drained from his face, replaced by confusion and the first hints of fear. "Where are you taking me?" he asked, his voice smaller now. "Just outside, sir," Rivera replied. "There's a car waiting. We need to get you home." "Home?" Chen repeated. "But the gala is no longer a place you should be," Rivera finished for him. "Orders from the chief judge, sir. Direct orders." As the doors closed behind them, the ballroom erupted in conversation. Everyone was talking about what they had just witnessed. Susan Miller approached Eastwood with concern. "Clint, I'm so sorry about that. I've never seen anything like it." Eastwood shook his head slightly. "Don't worry about it. Man's had too much to drink and too much on his mind. Happens to the best of us." But as he said it, Corinne Doyle was already sending her video to friends. By morning, Judge Edward Chen's career would be hanging by a thread. And he didn't even know it yet. The cool night air hit Judge Chen's face as the Marshals escorted him out of the Palace Hotel. The sudden temperature change seemed to wake him up a bit. He blinked several times, as if trying to understand what was happening to him. The effects of the champagne were still strong, but reality was starting to break through. "This is completely unnecessary," Chen said, his words less slurred but still thick with anger. "I was having a conversation with Mr. Eastwood, a perfectly legal conversation. Marshal Frank Rivera kept a firm but gentle hand on Chen's elbow, guiding him toward a black SUV parked at the curb. "Sir, that wasn't a conversation. That was a public spectacle." "I'm a federal judge," Chen said, pulling his arm away. "You can't just drag me out of a public event like some common criminal." Diane Peters stepped forward. "Judge Chen, we're not arresting you. We're protecting you from yourself. The chief judge ordered us to remove you from the gala before you did more damage to the dignity of the court." Chen stopped walking. "The chief judge? You spoke to the chief judge about me?" "He called us," Rivera explained. "Apparently, someone at the gala contacted him about your behavior." Chen's face, already flushed from alcohol, turned a deeper shade of red. Who would dare report me to the chief judge?" "That doesn't matter right now," Rivera said, opening the SUV's back door. "What matters is getting you home safely." Back inside the gala, Karen Doyle was showing her video to a small group of colleagues. They watched with wide eyes and shocked expressions as Judge Chen's tirade played out on the small screen. "I can't believe he said those things," one woman whispered. "And to Clint Eastwood of all people." "I've appeared in Chen's courtroom," a man in the group said. "He's always been stern but professional. I've never seen him like this." Karen nodded. "I sent the video to my supervisor at the court. She told me to preserve it. This is going to be a big deal." Across the ballroom, Clint Eastwood had resumed his conversations with guests, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. But people kept approaching him with concerned looks and sympathetic words. "Mr. Eastwood, I'm so sorry about that scene," said Lavra Green, a film critic for the San Francisco Chronicle. Judge Chen's behavior was completely out of line. Eastwood gave a small shrug. "I've been called worse by better," he said with a hint of a smile. Lavra laughed nervously. "Still at a charity event? It was so unprofessional." "People have bad days," Eastwood replied. "Even judges." Harold Barnes, head of the Judicial Conduct Committee, watched Eastwood from across the room. He admired how the actor was handling the situation with grace. Barnes himself was not feeling so gracious. He had already received 3 calls from other committee members who had heard about the incident through the grapevine. "Yes, I saw the whole thing," Barnes said into his phone. "It was worse than you're hearing. Chen was completely out of control. No, I don't think it was just the alcohol. There seemed to be real anger there. Yes, the Marshals removed him." "I agree. We need an emergency meeting first thing tomorrow." Outside, Chen was reluctantly getting into the back of the SUV. His initial resistance was fading as the reality of his situation became clearer. He sat heavily on the leather seat and put his head in his hands. "This is a nightmare," he muttered. Marshal Rivera sat beside him while Diane Peters took the driver's seat. Eric Hammond would follow in a separate vehicle. "Where are we going?" Chen asked, looking up. "We're taking you home, sir," Rivera replied. "It's for the best." Chen stared out the window as the car pulled away from the curb. The bright lights of the Palace Hotel grew smaller behind them. His career, he suddenly realized, might be fading just as quickly. "The video," he said suddenly. "There was a woman recording with her phone." "Others too," Rivera nodded. "Yes, sir. Several people were recording. So it's going to be online, all over the internet." "It wasn't a question. Most likely, sir." Chen closed his eyes. "This can't be happening." At the same time, Karen Doyle's video was already spreading. She had sent it to her supervisor, who forwarded it to several colleagues. One of them sent it to a friend at a local news station. Another posted it in a private group chat for law clerks. From there, it spread to social media. By the time Chen reached his home in Pacific Heights, the first news alerts were already appearing on phones across San Francisco. Federal judge melts down at charity gala, insults Clint Eastwood. Chen didn't see these alerts. After the Marshals escorted him to his front door and made sure he got inside safely, he went straight to his liquor cabinet and poured himself a large scotch. The champagne had worn off enough for him to feel the beginning of shame, and he wanted to dull that feeling as quickly as possible. He sat in his dark living room, drink in hand, and tried to remember exactly what he had said to Eastwood. The details were fuzzy. He remembered feeling angry. He remembered wanting to put the old actor in his place. But the specific words, those were lost in an alcoholic haze. It couldn't have been that bad, he told himself, taking a long sip of scotch. I just spoke my mind. That's not against the law. His phone rang. Chen looked at the screen and saw it was his clerk, Alan Simmons. He hesitated, then answered, "Hello? Judge Chen?" Alan's voice was tense. "Are you okay? I just saw a video online of you at the gala." Chen's stomach dropped. "What video? What did it show?" You having words with Clint Eastwood, sir. It's all over Twitter. The news sites are picking it up too. How bad is it?" Chen asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alan paused. "It's pretty bad, sir. I think you should call your lawyer." After hanging up, Chen sat frozen for several minutes. Then, with shaking hands, he opened his laptop and searched his own name. The results made him feel sick. Dozens of news stories were already appearing. Video clips from multiple angles showed his angry face as he jabbed his finger at Eastwood. The headlines were brutal. Judge goes ballistic on Hollywood legend. Federal judge removed from charity gala after attacking Clint Eastwood. Judicial meltdown. Chen loses it at Film Foundation event. Chen slammed the laptop shut. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. Not after 20 years on the bench. Not after all the cases he had decided. All the respect he had earned. His phone rang again. This time it was the chief judge. Chen stared at the screen, watching it ring 5 times before it went to voicemail. He couldn't face that conversation. Not yet. Instead, he poured another scotch and tried to think of a way out of this mess. There had to be an explanation he could give, some way to make this all go away. Maybe he could claim he was on medication that interacted badly with alcohol. Maybe he could say he was under extreme stress from a difficult case. But as he scrolled through more news articles on his phone, Chen knew the truth. There was no easy way out. The videos were too clear, the witnesses too numerous. He had publicly insulted an American icon at a charity event while representing the federal judiciary. In the car, taking her home, Karen Doyle was shocked to see how quickly her video had spread. Friends were texting her, asking if she was the one who captured the footage. Her Instagram was flooded with follow requests. A local news station had already contacted her for permission to use the video. "I didn't mean for this to blow up so big," she told her roommate on the phone. "I just thought people should see how he behaved." "You did the right thing," her roommate assured her. "If a judge can't control himself in public, people have a right to know." Karen wasn't so sure anymore. As her video spread further and further, she wondered if she had just ended Judge Chen's career with the press of a button. Judge Edward Chen woke up with a pounding headache. Sunlight streamed through his bedroom window, making him wince. For a moment, he lay still, trying to remember why he felt so terrible. Then it all came rushing back: the gala, the champagne, Clint Eastwood, the Marshals. He groaned and pulled a pillow over his face. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Chen ignored it. It had been buzzing all night. He had turned it to silent after the 10th call, but could still hear the vibration against the wood. Finally, he reached over and looked at the screen. 27 missed calls, 42 text messages, over 100 email notifications. "This isn't happening," he muttered, sitting up slowly. He scrolled through the missed calls. The chief judge had called 5 times. His sister had called twice. His clerk, Alan, had called 4 times. The rest were from other judges, court administrators, and numbers he didn't recognize, probably reporters. Chen forced himself to get out of bed. He stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. The man in the mirror looked awful. Bloodshot eyes, unshaven face, hair sticking up in all directions. He barely recognized himself. Downstairs, he made strong coffee and turned on his television. He needed to know how bad it was. He flipped to a news channel and immediately saw his own face on the screen. It was a still image from one of the videos, showing him with his finger pointed at Eastwood, his face twisted in anger. The headline below read, "Judge's meltdown goes viral. Judicial Conduct Committee to meet today." Chen quickly changed the channel, but the next one was showing the same story. A reporter stood outside the federal courthouse in San Francisco. Sources tell us that Judge Edward Chen has been temporarily relieved of his duties, pending an investigation by the Judicial Conduct Committee, the reporter said. The committee is meeting an emergency session this morning to review the incident that occurred last night at the San Francisco Film Foundation Gala. Chen turned off the TV. His hands were shaking. Relieved of duties? Emergency session? This was moving faster than he had imagined possible. He picked up his phone and finally listened to his voicemails. The first was from the chief judge. Left last night. Edward, call me immediately. This is a disaster. The second, also from the chief judge, was from early this morning. Edward, the committee is meeting at 9. You need to be there. This is very serious. Call me back. Chen looked at the clock on his microwave. It was 8:15 a.m. He had 45 minutes to get to the courthouse. Across town, Harold Barnes was already in his office, reviewing the videos of Chen's outburst. With each viewing, his concern deepened. This wasn't just a judge having too much to drink and saying something foolish. This was a federal judge publicly attacking a private citizen with political and personal insults while representing the judiciary at a public event. There was a knock at his door. Nancy Cole, another member of the Judicial Conduct Committee, entered. Have you seen the morning shows? She asked without preamble. Barnes nodded. It's everywhere. This is a nightmare for the court, Nancy said, sitting down across from him. The public already thinks judges are political. This just confirms their worst suspicions. Where's Chen? Barnes asked. No one knows. He's not answering his phone. The Marshals confirmed they took him home last night, but he hasn't responded to any messages since then. Barnes sighed. If he doesn't show up for the meeting, it will only make things worse. Can we really save his career at this point? Nancy asked. The videos are damning. I don't know, Barnes admitted, but we have to follow the process. Meanwhile, Corinne Doyle was also dealing with unexpected attention. Her phone had been ringing since dawn. News outlets wanted to interview her about the video. Friends and family were calling to see if she was really the one who had captured the famous footage. Her normally quiet social media accounts were overflowing with messages and comments. She sat in her small apartment, feeling overwhelmed. When she had recorded Judge Chen's outburst, she never expected it to become national news. Now her name was attached to a viral scandal. Her boss at the court had left a message asking her to come in early. She was nervous about what that might mean. Would she be in trouble for recording a judge? For sharing the video? She wasn't sure about the rules in this situation. As she got ready for work, her roommate called out from the living room. Corinne, you're on TV again. Corinne rushed in to see a news anchor talking while her video played in a small box beside his head. The clerk who recorded this video, Karen Doyle, has become an overnight sensation. Her footage has been viewed over 2 million times since last night. 2 million? Corinne whispered. How is that possible? Her roommate shrugged. People love to see powerful people mess up. And this is Clint Eastwood we're talking about. Everyone loves him. Judge Chen arrived at the courthouse at 8:55 a.m., barely making it in time for the emergency meeting. He had showered and put on his best suit, hoping to project an image of control and dignity. But he could feel the stares as he walked through the building. Clerks, attorneys, even security guards, everyone knew what had happened. The committee was meeting in a large conference room on the top floor. When Chen entered, 6 serious faces turned to look at him. Harold Barnes, at the head of the table, gestured to an empty chair. "Judge Chen, please sit down." Chen took the seat, trying to keep his expression neutral, despite the churning in his stomach. "Before we begin, I want to say that I deeply regret my behavior last night. I had too much to drink, and I said things I shouldn't have said." Barnes nodded. "We appreciate that acknowledgement. But I'm afraid this goes beyond having too much to drink." He pressed a button on a remote control, and a large screen on the wall came to life. It showed Karen Doyle's video, now playing on a news website. The sound was off, but Chen could see himself getting angrier and angrier as the silent footage played. "This video has been viewed over 2 million times, Barnes said. "It's on every major news network. The court has received hundreds of calls and emails. The chief judge's office is being flooded with demands for your removal." Chen swallowed hard. "Removal? Surely that's an overreaction. I made a mistake, yes, but a mistake?" Nancy Cole interrupted. "Judge Chen, you publicly attacked a private citizen. You used your position as a federal judge to try to intimidate and shame someone for their political views. You violated several canons of judicial conduct in less than 5 minutes." Another committee member, George Wright, added, "And you did it all on camera at a public event, while clearly intoxicated. This isn't just about what you said to Eastwood. It's about the damage you've done to public trust in the judiciary." Chen looked around the table, searching for any sympathetic face. He found none. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Barnes leaned forward. "The committee has voted to suspend you immediately, pending a full investigation. Your cases will be reassigned. You are not to enter your courtroom or chambers until further notice." Chen felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. "Suspended? But my cases will be handled by other judges," Barnes said firmly. "This is non-negotiable, Edward. You need to surrender your courthouse credentials today." Chen sat in stunned silence. 20 years on the bench, hundreds of important cases. A reputation built over decades, and it was all crumbling because of 5 minutes of angry words. "What about Eastwood?" Chen asked. "Has anyone spoken to him?" "Mr. Eastwood released a brief statement this morning," Barnes replied. He said, and I quote, "I hold no ill will toward Judge Chen and consider the matter closed. He's being far more gracious than you deserve." Chen nodded slowly. Even now, Eastwood was handling this with more dignity than he had shown. "I understand," Chen said finally. "What do I need to do?" As Barnes explained the suspension process, Chen's mind drifted. He thought about his courtroom, his staff, his career, all the work he had done, all the respect he had earned. And now he was suspended, possibly on the path to being removed from the bench entirely. Because he couldn't control his temper. Because he'd had too much to drink. Because he'd let his personal feelings overrule his professional judgment. The meeting ended 30 minutes later. Chen walked out of the courthouse with his personal items in a small box. Reporters were gathered on the steps, cameras pointed. At the door, he froze for a moment, then turned and exited through a side entrance. He wasn't ready to face more cameras. Not yet. 2 weeks passed. Judge Edward Chen sat alone in his living room, staring at his silent phone. The calls from reporters had finally stopped. The news had moved on to other scandals. But the silence from his colleagues hurt more than the media. Attention had. Chen picked up the newspaper from his coffee table. A small article on page 6 caught his eye. Judicial conduct investigation continues in Chen case. He read it quickly, learning nothing new. The committee was still reviewing evidence. No decision had been announced. His professional life remained in limbo. He tossed the paper aside and walked to his window. From his home in Pacific Heights, he could see the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. On a normal day, the view would bring him peace. Today, it just reminded him of everything he might lose. His phone rang, startling him. Chen checked the caller. ID, Alan Simmons, his clerk. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Alan. Judge Chen, how are you?" Alan's voice was polite, but careful. "I've been better," Chen admitted. "How are things at the courthouse?" "Busy. Judge Hernandez has taken most of your cases. She's working long hours to keep up." Chen felt a pang of guilt. "And the staff? Everyone's fine. We miss you, though." Alan paused. "Sir, I'm calling because I heard something today. The committee has scheduled an announcement for tomorrow morning." Chen's heart raced. "Did you hear anything about what they've decided?" "No, sir. But it's unusual for them to make a public announcement. Usually, these things are handled privately." After they hung up, Chen paced his living room. A public announcement could only mean one thing. The committee had decided to recommend his removal from the bench. His career was over. Across town, Karen Doyle was also thinking about the upcoming announcement. Her 15 minutes of fame had passed quickly, but she still felt connected to the Chen scandal. Her video had started it all. Sometimes she wondered if she had done the right thing by sharing it. Her phone buzzed with a text from her supervisor. "Committee announcement tomorrow. Be prepared for renewed media interest," Karen sighed. Just when things were getting back to normal, she wondered if Judge Chen would be removed. Part of her felt sorry for him, despite his behavior. One bad night had destroyed a 20-year career. It seemed harsh, but then she remembered his angry face as he jabbed his finger at Clint Eastwood. His slurred words and mean insults, his abuse of his position. Maybe it wasn't so harsh after all. Judges were supposed to be better than that. The next morning, Chen dressed carefully in his best suit. He wouldn't attend the announcement in person. He hadn't been invited, but he wanted to look professional when the news cameras inevitably showed up at his house afterward. At 10 a.m., he turned on his television. All the local stations were covering the announcement live. The camera showed Harold Barnes standing at a podium in the courthouse lobby, looking serious in a dark gray suit. "Good morning," Barnes began. "As head of the Judicial Conduct Committee, I am here to announce our decision regarding Judge Edward Chen following the incident at the San Francisco Film Foundation Gala 2 weeks ago. After careful review of video evidence and witness statements, and after meeting with Judge Chen himself, the committee has determined that his actions violated several canons of judicial conduct. Specifically, Canon 1, which requires judges to uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary, and Canon 2, which requires judges to avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety in all activities." Barnes paused, looking directly into the camera. "The committee has recommended, and the chief judge has accepted, that Judge Chen be formally reprimanded and suspended without pay for a period of 60 days. Chen blinked in surprise. "Suspended, not removed?" Barnes continued. "Additionally, Judge Chen will be required to complete alcohol counseling and a judicial ethics course before returning to the bench. Upon his return, he will be on probation for 1 year, during which any similar incidents would result in immediate removal." Chen sat down heavily on his couch. He still had a job. His career wasn't over. The relief was so intense he felt lightheaded. On the screen, a reporter raised her hand. "Has Judge Chen issued an apology to Mr. Eastwood?" Barnes nodded. "Judge Chen has written a personal letter of apology to Mr. Eastwood, which has been delivered. He has also agreed to make a public statement later today." Another reporter asked, "Was the committee's decision influenced by Mr. Eastwood's request for leniency?" Chen leaned forward. "What was this?" Barnes looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Eastwood did contact the committee. I cannot share the details of that communication, but I can confirm that he did not wish to see Judge Chen lose his position over this incident." Chen stared at the television in disbelief. Eastwood had spoken up for him? After everything he had said? The press conference continued. But Chen wasn't listening anymore. He was thinking about Clint Eastwood, the man he had publicly insulted, the man he had tried to humiliate. And now, apparently, the man who had helped save his career. Across town, in a luxury hotel suite, Clint Eastwood watched the same press conference. A young assistant stood nearby, waiting for his reaction. "What do you think, Mr. Eastwood?" she asked when Barnes finished speaking. Eastwood shrugged. "Seems fair. Man deserves a second chance, after what he said about you." "Words are just words," Eastwood replied. "Everyone says things they regret sometimes." The assistant nodded, impressed by his forgiveness. "The studio called again about your schedule. They wanted to know when you'll be back in Los Angeles." "Tomorrow," Eastwood said. "We've got a movie to finish." Later that afternoon, Judge Chen stood in front of his house facing a small group of reporters. His prepared statement was brief but sincere. "I want to apologize to the court, to the public, and especially to Mr. Clint Eastwood for my inexcusable behavior 2 weeks ago," he said, his voice steady. "I failed to live up to the standards expected of a federal judge. I allowed personal feelings and alcohol to cloud my judgment. For that, I am deeply sorry." He took a deep breath before continuing. "I am grateful for the opportunity to learn from this mistake and to prove that it does not define my character or my career. I also want to thank Mr. Eastwood for his gracious response to this situation. His dignified handling of my unwarranted attack shows why he is not just a Hollywood legend, but a true gentleman." After the reporters left, Chen went back inside and poured himself a glass of water. He had wanted a drink, but that would have to change. He had 60 days to reflect on his actions and prepare for his return to the bench. He wouldn't waste the opportunity. His phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. He answered cautiously. "Judge Chen." The voice was familiar, raspy, quiet, and unmistakable. "Mr. Eastwood?" Chen could hardly believe it. "Just wanted to say I got your letter," Eastwood said. "Apology accepted." Chen struggled to find words. "I thank you. And thank you for speaking to the committee. I didn't deserve your support." "Everyone deserves a second chance," Eastwood replied. "Just make it count." "I will," Chen promised. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need," Eastwood said. "Just be a good judge. That's thanks enough." After they hung up, Chen sat quietly for a long time. The man he had insulted, the man whose career and character he had attacked, had just shown him more grace than he had ever shown anyone in his courtroom. In that moment, Judge Edward Chen learned something no law book could teach him, something about humility, forgiveness, and true strength of character. It was a lesson he would carry with him every day when he returned to the bench. A lesson taught not by a legal scholar, but by a Hollywood actor he had once dismissed. Sometimes, Chen realized, justice comes in unexpected forms.